Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. I know it's been a really long time since I've posted anything on this channel really. I don't want to make up too many excuses, but between family personal issues and my personal medical issues, I just haven't had the time or energy to really take on much for projects, let alone make videos. However, I have been playing around on and off since my last Supercharger video. So I'm going to compile all of what I've done together in a kind of mishmash of different things and get something out there for you guys. I'm sure everybody's kind of wondering what's up. So I'm going to go chronologically and basically starting right after my last Supercharger experiment. If you haven't watched that video, go check that out and then come back to this. At any rate, I wanted to try switching to a carburetor that had adjustable jets and a primer on it so I didn't have to throw fuel in it with a bottle. After getting everything roughly set up, I will make an attempt at running with this carb and see what happens.
I might have to check if this is actually clean or not.
So at this point, I'm clearly not getting proper amounts of fuel. So I'm split between two problems. I'm pretty sure this carb is clean because I had cleaned it years ago and it had been sitting on a shelf. Nothing happened to it. But I'm going to pop the jets out and clean it anyways. The other issue I'm concerned with is the supercharger itself does not seal well enough to create proper vacuum and therefore balance the fuel through the carburetor properly. That or it takes too much vacuum, but these carburetors are rated for a lot larger displacement and it should be fine. However, that's a should be and I don't know for sure. But I am leaning towards the leakage because it's not really sealed up by anything rubber. It just has some basic labyrinth setups, if anything. It's just tight. However, I continue on because what else am I going to do? So bad sound, bad sound. What ended up happening here is the impeller slid on the shaft, either just too much torque, too much load, or just the shaking from the RPM spikes of the engine up and down. Not exactly certain. It could be my press fit wasn't tight enough, or the fact that I'm using tubing over actual shafting and it doesn't hold the fit, or it all got too warm and expanded too much to hold its fit. Either way, I'm dead in the water currently. So at this point, I decided to give it a break on the roots blower. I'm going to kind of think about how I'm going to solve mounting the shafts properly to the rotors. In the meantime, I've been playing with the solution for my fuel problem. Instead of sealing everything up and adding a lot more load and drag to the system and a lot more heat there the plastic's not going to be too happy with, I've decided I was going to go with some sort of mechanical fuel system. Basically, it's just a pump and an injector that's directly connected to the engine, and as the engine spins faster, there's more fuel. Overall, this system is terrible for any sort of real drivability. It kind of turns the throttle into a switch. That's not a very apt explanation, but it's a quick understanding. So what I ended up doing was come up with the pump mount system that'll mount right on the back of the supercharger. That way I don't have to make any more mounts or drives off the original engine. And if the supercharger fails, it cuts fuel, which is nice. I have yet to assemble and test any of this though, and this is kind of where I've left my roots blower. So if you haven't noticed by now, I kind of do this thing where I flop around from project to project and idea to idea. Part of the reason why I do this is I'm not 100% which direction I should go with one project, so I just move on to something where I have better ideas. That being said, I have come around to working back on the centrifugal type superchargers, but this time I think I'm just going to go full electric. For one, it makes it a lot smaller, a lot easier, a lot lighter, a lot less complicated to make, and at least for testing purposes will allow me to jump around with different supercharger sizes, impellers, motors, and different things until I kind of get everything right where I want it. And if I design it to run off 12 volts, most vehicles will have a source of 12 volts anyways. Even most lawnmower or snowblower engines can be easily modified to have a 12 volt charging coil at least. Speaking of testing, testing needs equipment. And I've kind of been working on a better flow meter, actually a few of them. The flow meter shown above is a slightly modified version of my original flow meter. This one's a lot prettier to look at, should seal up a lot better, looks a little bit more industrial for sure too. It's also roughly calibrated with my inflator gun. The inflator gun is apparently rated at 8.5 CFM-ish. That depends where you're looking. I have seen 9, 10, and 8.5. So it's not super accurate, but it's going to give me some consistent measurements that are a lot better than the last version. So this version here is a much higher range version and has a spring instead of using gravity to work against. This one has a much larger range, however, I do not have it calibrated. However, about 2/3 of the way up is how much air my shop vac moves. I could go and research what my shop vac moves, but I haven't had the time or energy to really go do that either. There's a few little kinks I want to work out, some refinements I'd like to do to this, but otherwise it seems to work really well. And I'm much happier with both of these overall. So what I'm doing here is I have this plug I made that closes off 75% of the flow or pipe diameter. I'm then venting off of from earlier on the line to a manometer that I also made, or anything that's too high pressure for the manometer, I'm going to switch over to my other gauge. Keep in mind this is all pretty rough still, and I've been working on a better setup since. I should be teeing off to both, so I have a base line and an overpressure line, and I should put a ball check at the end of the manometer, so when it hits a certain pressure it blocks it off and everything else goes to the flow meter or the PSI meter. However, I shot this a while ago and ideas constantly come at me, so things slowly get better. The next time I get at this, I should have a better setup. So I've roughly charted the performance and converted the inches to PSI. Again, none of this is really concrete, it's all just close guesses. However, it'll give me some comparable stats from, housing to housing and impeller to impeller. And it'll at least give me a direction to work in. So it's been a little bit and I didn't really label everything very well. So from what I understand, number 2 was the same housing with a different impeller design. This seems to show some minor improvements. I do have some others, but we'll get there. So with this impeller design, there is a little bit of funny business going on between 3 and 5 CFM, where it really doesn't seem to matter. The CFM kind of flattens out, but the pressure goes up mostly. It acts really weird. I don't really know how to describe or explain what's going on. However, overall, this does move more air and more pressure at the same volume. Also, it seems to peak upwards at the end, which seems to suggest I should be spinning it faster. However, since I've limited myself to 12 volts, I'm either going to have to find a higher kV motor or go with a larger diameter impeller and the same motor. So far, the motor doesn't seem to be running short on power, and I'm using a 2440, I think it's a 5000 kV brushless motor. I also forgot to mention the 0 CFM line that has the highest pressure on the chart is a deadheaded pressure. I just kind of stuck that in there. It makes the chart look funny, but it makes sense if you understand what's going on. And while deadheading the number 2, I almost shot water everywhere out the top of the manometer. So I hooked it up to the car crappy boost gauge, and we can see, I don't know, it looks like a little bit of movement. Judging by how crappy this gauge is, that's approximately 1 psi, which isn't very good. However, this thing's tiny, so I'm probably not spinning it anywhere near as fast as it should be, and I probably start with a smaller diameter motor because you can get higher kVs easier with the smaller motors. Like I said earlier, I should probably bump up to a larger diameter, and that's where I was headed with this. So that's about all I managed to get done for the superchargers this year. I have printed a larger housing and impeller set that will fit the 2440 brushless motor. I have yet to get any of it together. I had issues with the printer. Like I said, there's a lot going on, and I just haven't had time or energy to get around to it. The other issue kind of comes along as I'm starting to realize with my medical condition, I'm probably never going to race anything again. I just don't have the stamina to keep up that sort of performance level for any length of time. And as I realize that, I'm slightly losing interest in this project. I'm sure I'll come around to it again, but right now I'm not really working on any supercharger stuff. A lot of it's already drawn up, and some of it's even printed. I just don't, don't really feel like doing it, and why bother, pushing myself to do something. Considering all of this was supposed to be just kind of a distraction and entertainment and a way to, build my skills and knowledge after not being able to work any longer. Otherwise, I'll do better work if I'm, really interested in the project instead of just kind of dragging myself through it. So, otherwise, I do have some equipment I might be able to use a supercharger on. A lawn tractor with a snowblower might be interesting to see if I can hop up one of those. Well, I know I can, just to see what effect it would be. But I'm really a ways from doing any of that. I have done a few things on my other channels. I'm going to plug those here a little bit. I moved all of my radio stuff to the TurboPrint Tactical channel, and I'll be moving all the robotic stuff to the TurboPrint Robotics channel. Since it's currently snowing where I am, I'm working on a snowblower robot again, back at that project. Considering my situation, that seems like a much more fruitful endeavor currently. At any rate, if you've made it this far and you're still listening to me ramble on at the end here, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed my video, and sorry if you were waiting all year for something more. I do appreciate the interest I get in my projects, and I do apologize for people wanting things that I'm not currently working on. But it is what it is. And that's about it. Have yourselves a good one, and hopefully I'll talk to you later.